Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, high sexual discipline. I wouldn't date a guy who watches porn or goes to strip clubs or anything like that. And ideally...
Wait, you wouldn't date a guy who watches porn?
Nope.
But you
Yep.
do OF?
Yep.
Is that a...
Seems like maybe a double standard.
Is it a double?
No, it's not. I could be a college professor but not date students. I could work at a soup kitchen and not date a homeless guy. Just because I monetize off a demographic doesn't mean I have to date them.
Well, let's
What?
get into this
Let's
a
get
little,
into
shall
it.
we? So
Yeah.
let's start with, why do you prefer that they not watch porn?
Because it affects pair bonding, it desensitizes you to your partner, it can lead to erectile dysfunction, all those things.
If you were responsible for causing those things in a man, would you be doing an immoral action?
Potentially.
And are you
I don't think-
participating in doing those immoral actions to men?
No, just because I think maybe you're less of a good romantic partner, that doesn't mean you're less of a moral person.
No, that's
so
not my
just because I
question.
don't think you would be a good husband for me doesn't mean I'm deeming you degenerate or a bad person.
Back up. You just said that all of those are bad qualities. That you said that
not objectively
if
bad.
You were,
for me personally, what I'm looking for is pair bonding. Okay, finish.
You said that a person who was causing those problems in men would be doing something immoral.
No, I didn't say that.
So is it if a person's contributing to causing that in men, are they doing something immoral?
So if I'm a lesbian and I only want to date women,
don't ask
but
me a
then
question. Don't
I'm
ask
putting
me a
out,
question.
No,
answer
listen.
my question.
No, I'm explaining to you.
Just answer the question.
Listen.
Don't ask me
Is this
a question.
inconsistent? I'm going to ask you a question. If I'm a lesbian
Answer
and I only
my
want to date
question.
women,
Yeah, as soon as
but
you
I make
answer my question,
OnlyFans
I'll answer your
content for
question.
men, is
Answer
that
my question.
inconsistent?
Answer my
I
question.
think she's trying to.
No, she's asking me a
No,
question.
he's evading my point because
Asking
it
a
debunks
question
this
is
whole
not
thing.
answering my question. Then I'll answer
Your question has no bearing on this discussion.
Then answer it.
What was your question?
Okay, one more time, since you tried everything to avoid it. If you contribute to those same problems that are against your preference in a mate, okay, those same issues, are you doing something immoral?
Nope.
No.
Same way, like I just said, if I'm a lesbian who puts out pornographic content for men to consume, it's not inconsistent or wrong for me to only date women. I can have a preference for someone while monetizing off an entirely different demographic. That doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm. So...
Am I doing something wrong for indulging straight men if I only want to date women?
I think you are. I think
that makes no
that
sense.
you're creating a contribution towards the immorality, and you know it's immoral because
but I don't think it's immoral to be heterosexual, and I'd be indulging heterosexuality while personally being homosexual.
Your preference alone is against it. Why is your preference against it? Isn't there an implication
why would
there?
sexual orientation be against it? No, answer my question. Why is it if I was a lesbian and I want to date women, but I put out pornographic content that indulges heterosexual men, is that inconsistent, or am I contributing to a problem?
Well, all of that, literally all of that would be immoral. I would say that that's still an immoral thing, whether or not
it is,
you're
but
being
not for the reason that you
whether or not
discerned
you're
it to
being
be.
inconsistent there. I didn't make an inconsistency argument. I asked you about whether or not it's moral.
You said if I don't want to date a certain pool that I'm contributing to, does that mean I'm creating a problem?
Yeah, no, I'm just asking, is it immoral for you to contribute to that at all?
No.
It's not.
It's not immoral for me to contribute to traits which I personally would not date.
No, that's not my question. My question is it immoral for you to be contributing towards those traits like the negative side effects in men? Is that immoral to do?
No, because not everyone has the same goals as I do. Not everyone's waiting to have sex until they're married. Some people view sex and relationships completely disparately than I do.
So, but why wouldn't you? Those are all negative side effects. You'd agree with that, right?
It depends. Some people, I know a lot of women who don't want to get married. I know a lot of men who don't want to get married either.
The side effects of like ED, things like this.
Well, that side effect doesn't happen to everybody either.
I'm not saying it does.
I think it depends. If certain men want to live a hedonistic lifestyle, I'm not going to deem them immoral for it. I think people have totally different purposes and goals.
Again.
It was, and I answered it.
My question specifically was, if you contribute towards that, that's harmful, isn't it? And isn't that the standard you use for morality?
It's not harmful if it's congruent to their goals. If their goal is to be a hedonist, then that's fine.
But their goal's
that's not my goal.
Okay, but here's the problem.
If their goal is to jack off to as many girls as possible before they die, they can go for it.
Because if it's hedonism, right, you still have a harm principle. So even if a person is doing a thing and they say, I'm going to do this thing because I don't care about the harm, you are still supposed to care about the harm that you cause, right?
No.
No? You're not?
Because they have a totally different moral rubric than I do. If their goal is to fuck as many girls as possible because they think that makes them more alpha or male, I wouldn't
cares
support
what their moral rubric is? You're the consequentialist.
What?
So you are supposed to care about the harm you do.
I'm not a consequentialist. We've been over this so many times.
Oh, what are you again?
I said I was a moral absolutist.
You're a moral absolutist.
Yeah. Probably more that than a utilitarian.
Is that
Why are you shaking your head?
You're not a subjectivist.
You're not.
You're not a moral absolutist. It's ridiculous.
I'm sorry, what is that?
It means like you're not necessarily looking at the consequence of an action to deem its morality. My point is, people have totally different goals.
Okay, so is porn always wrong?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, is it always right?
No.
Well, they're not moral absolutists. If it was moral,
That's-
if it
that
was a
has
moral
nothing to do with-
absolute, it would either be always right or always wrong.
That's
Because
not
it's
true.
absolute.
It varies.
Okay, give me an example of a moral
I would-
absolute that's not yes or no, right or wrong.
I would love to. With porn, for example, porn will
Mm-hmm.
disaffect your relationship if one partner is okay with it and one is not. That will affect cheating and compatibility. If both partners are proponents of pornography consumption, that'll actually increase your sexual intimacy with each other.
What does that have to do with anything I just said?
My point is, you're looking for like a black or white answer. Is porn
Because
good or
you're an
bad? And it depends on the
absolutist.
parties
What do you
consuming
think
it.
absolute means? You don't know what absolute means?
I know what absolute means.
Well,
but
what
I
is
think
a
you're
moral
intentionally- I think you're
absolutist?
intentionally being obtuse.
No, I think you're intentionally evading. What do you think absolute means?
No, answer my question.
What do you think absolute means?
Definite, finite.
Finite and definite at the
Sure.
same time?
At the same time.
That's what you think absolute means?
Absolute means definite.
What do you think a moral absolutist is?
It means you have certain moral principles that you think take precedence over the consequences of those actions, and you want to be a proponent for those moral principles, even if there is an increase in harm over help.
Okay, so it's not about consequences.
What?
It's not about consequences for you at all.
It's not about consequences. It's about looking at the fact that people have different aims. If a certain man wants to prioritize his sexual pornography consumption over getting married because he personally doesn't think getting married is a net good for him, who am I to say that's wrong and I'm contributing to a problem?
But then
Are
let me
those-
ask a single question, right? You would agree with me that the age of consent's arbitrary, right?
Would I agree with you that the age of is this TOS, Brian?
No. Okay, the AOC is arbitrary, right?
Is it arbitrary?
Yeah.
Not really.
Then give me the moral imperative for it real quick. The moral absolute statement for that.
The moral imperative would be that it's generally wrong to.
It's generally wrong.
It's
not
generally
based on the
wrong.
consequence, though.
What?
It's not based on the consequence. This is an absolute. So why should the AOC absolutely be X age?
It's not. It varies.
Why
by
should it
state.
be? You're a moral absolutist.
I don't even know if I would subscribe to that.
You wouldn't subscribe to your own worldview?
I don't even know if I would subscribe that there is a certain age of consent because it varies by state.
So
Is there a
you're
different
not an
example?
absolutist then?
You're evading from my whole point.
You're not an absolutist?
You said that it's hypocritical and it's inconsistent and it's kind of immoral. I'm contributing to a moral problem to put out porn
No.
content.
His question was whether or not there
No,
was
you're
a
the one who- you're the
contingency
one who
between a
interrupted
double
me.
standard. I asked you about the morality of a thing.
Yes, and you said I'm
you
creating a
say I'm a
problem
moral
by contributing to
absolutist.
traits that I personally would not date.
Yeah.
and that's completely
now I'm
analogous.
inside of your worldview, and
No,
now
but
I'm
why
trying to
won't you
figure out
address the
if
analogy
you're,
I created
because,
between that and me being
because
a
if the
lesbian and wanting to
foundation-
date women,
I'll explain it.
but not wanting to date
Guys,
straight
one
men?
at a time, one at a time.
Yeah, I can
please.
explain it. Because if the foundation of your worldview on its own is incorrect, then I don't care about the rest of what you even just had to say. If the foundation of what you're saying makes no sense at all,
It makes
then
perfect
any
sense.
claims that you make past that are not even relevant. So explain to me how you're moral. Tell me what a moral absolutist even is.
I don't even know what this has to do with anything. Your rebuttal
You're
to me
just running.
was that
Stop
because
running.
I don't want to date certain traits that I may contribute to, that I'm being hypocritical and I'm creating some moral problem. And then I give you a perfect analogy. If I was a homosexual woman and I dated women, but I contribute to indulging heterosexual male pornography consumption, is that wrong? And you have yet to address that
I
point.
don't need to.
Why can't you? Why can't you?
I'm going to explain it to you. If the underlying foundation for which that current worldview you just
You're saying
explained,
if I can't
stop
flesh
talking,
out a
Far. It's my
perfect
turn, Far. It's my
ethical
turn, Far. It's my
rubric,
turn.
then it means that I'm being
My
hypocritical.
turn, Far.
Let him
Calm
talk,
down.
let him
Stop
talk, then you go
spurging.
ahead.
Stop spurging and listen.
Let's not use that word. Let's not use that. It's probably
Okay.
probably TOS.
Spurging's
Probably.
not against TOS.
It's not?
No. So,
Okay.
You can tone police
so
me, I don't
listen,
care.
if you have a foundation for an ethical
just avoid-
system,
we should
and then you
avoid
tell me a thing that you ought or ought not do, and I find out that your ethical system itself is inconsistent, you don't even know what it is, why would I ever listen to a word you had to say about ought for?
Because this is your chronic evasion of every point. Is when I give you a perfect analogy and see, this will make you concede on your rebuttal, then you're like, oh, now explain to me from A, B to C your exact moral worldview.
Yeah. Why is that a problem? To
Because then we're going to go
question
all
the
the way
integrity of your
backwards, and you're like, let's
foundation.
talk about where rights come from. Let's talk about where duties come from. Let's talk about
Let's
obligations.
talk about the foundation of the things you believe. Isn't that crazy?
How was the universe started? Let's talk about that,
The
right?
fa-
That's your like go-to all
Are
the
you
time.
going to answer to what a moral absolutist
Are you going to
is?
answer my initial question, which is why was that a false
I'll
analogy
just
between
concede
me
the
being a
whole
lesbian content
argument.
creator?
I'll just concede the whole argument there for the purpose of you
Don't
asking.
concede. Actually, give me an
of you
answer.
answering this question. I
No,
just
no.
conceded for the purpose of the argument.
no,
What's
not
a
for the
moral
purpose of the
absolutist?
argument.
What's a moral
Do you-
absolutist?
no.
I just conceded for the purpose of the argument.
Stop saying for the purpose of the
Why
argument.
not?
Genuinely.
I can't. I'm sorry. I can't test your consistency by conceding the argument just for the purpose of testing the worldview. That's not okay with Farah.
And you created a rebuttal, and then I gave a perfect rebuttal, and
Yeah,
now
and I'll
to
just
evade,
concede it for the
you're
sake
saying,
of
where'd your
argument.
rights come
Yeah, I'll
from?
just
Where do your
concede it for
ethics
the-
come
I'll
from?
just concede it for
What's
the
a
sake of
moral
argument.
absolutist? Just find
I'll
every word in the
just
dictionary for me.
concede it.
Enough for the sake of the argument.
just
I'm genuinely
conceding.
asking you, why is it a false analogy?
Yeah, I'm just conceding it for the sake of argument.
But
Now,
you
can we
keep
get
saying for the
back-
sake of the argument.
Can we get back to what because I need
No,
to know.
I'm not interested in talking
You're
about
not
how the
interested in
world
talking
started.
about the foundations of your own ethical system.
Ethical system, we're talking about sexual and romantic preferences.
But why would I care what your preferences are if you can't give me any type of ID for why it's ethical or unethical?
So I should just never talk if I can't flesh out to you how the universe
You
started,
should never make an ought
where
claim.
rights come from.
You should never make an ought claim unless you can say you
You
ought
made
to
the
do
ought
this
claim.
based on
You
this
made the
moral
ought claim.
integrity.
Let him go. Let him talk. Go
You
ahead.
cannot say, Andrew, you ought to do this. And when I say, why ought I do that? You go, I don't fucking know, because I just really feel like
That's
you
so
should.
funny because you're the one who made the ought claim.
I
I
didn't
said
make an
I
ought
wouldn't
claim.
date a guy who watches porn.
What ought claim did
and
I
then you
make?
said, then you ought not to contribute to that problem if you don't want to date a guy who
No,
watches
I asked
porn.
you if you should.
Yeah, so you created the ought claim.
No,
it's not about
I'm
should.
asking
I'm saying
you
my
from your
preference is
worldview.
completely
If you'd like to
consistent.
know my worldview,
I
yes,
don't
it's all
care.
total degeneracy. I hate it all. I think it's all immoral. What's a moral absolutist? Now, can you answer the question?
My point was
You're still not going to
me
answer the
saying that
question.
this creates
I
certain
just
traits.
answered
That doesn't
to
mean
your
I think it's
question.
morally wrong. Okay.
Answer the question. What's a moral absolutist?
A moral absolutist is someone who has certain moral principles that they think take priority over the consequences of those actions, and they think those should be honored with precedence over a utilitarian worldview.
So, why is it then that you're giving me an argument from the consequence?
How did I?
Because you're saying,
AB check. Thank you for the gift of 20 memberships. Go ahead, Andrew. You're saying.
okay. So what you're saying here is,
I didn't even give you a consequence.
you say pornography, not immoral, right?
Not necessarily, yeah.
Not necessarily. But if we try to discover why it's not, the reason that you say the reason it's not always immoral is because there's some consequences that I think are better than other consequences. That's why.
Even then, it has nothing to do with morality.
It would for an absolutist.
If I prefer a partner who's 6 foot over 5'10",
Mm-hmm.
and I'm preferring the consequence of their height, that doesn't mean I think 5'10" men are immoral.
Unless
Or
you're
there's
an
something morally wrong with being
but you,
short.
You wouldn't say, I'm a moral absolutist. I believe that this X thing is absolutely always immoral,
I'm
except
asking
in
you,
the case of the consequences.
why are we conflating romantic preferences with a moral rubric? Same way if I said...
Because it's an ought claim.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Same way if I said I prefer a tall guy over a short guy, that's not me saying, oh, then, it's bad for me to contribute to something that decreases height in men.
Yeah, but that would be a preference. In this particular occasion, I'm not talking about a preference. I'm asking you about the
We were
morality of
talking
a
a
thing.
preference. Same way again, if I could be
And
indulging
now I'm talking about the
heterosexual men
morality
while
of the
being a
thing.
lesbian. We
Yeah.
can go back and forth.
Okay, fine. So we'll just do, you think it's moral because your preferences, and I think it's moral because my preferences,
I
but
didn't
you're
say
a moral absolutist.
I didn't say moral. I literally said morality has no bearing on my romantic preferences
Then
in this
what?
instance. You're the one bringing up morality
Then
for no
if we're
reason.
just talking
Same
about
way again,
preferences,
I can
what are
like
we
a
even
guy who's
talking
a
about?
certain race or a certain height, and that doesn't mean I'm claiming
Then
all
what
other men
are-
are immoral.
Then Farah.
If I
if all
prefer
we're
women as a
talking
women,
about-
am I calling men immoral?
If all we're talking about is I like water and you like lemons,
Yes.
right? Then why, if we're making the discussion about these things which are going on inside of consistency issues, things like this, like he was talking about, or you claiming you're a moral absolutist, things like this, we're now outside the realm of preference. We're now into the realm of Farah's worldview. So
We're
I'm
talking
trying to
about
figure
romantic
out
preferences, and I'm
Yeah.
saying, why does romantic preferences even fall within the worldview of morality?
because what if you're romantic?
if I prefer a guy
I'm
with a
trying to
big
tell
dick
you.
over a small dick, does that mean
Yeah.
I think guys with small dicks are immoral?
I'll tell you. Because
me.
what if you indulge in your preferences and they're actually against your own morality? Then are you doing something immoral by following that preference?
Right, and I'm saying I'm not deeming those guys who watch porn or go to strip clubs immoral. I'm saying for what I'm seeking in a romantic relationship, those are not traits that would be preferable
Right.
to
You're
my
saying
goals.
they're not immoral, and I'm trying to show you that I think you think that either A, you're right and they're not immoral and you're a consequentialist, or
I don't think it's immoral. I would be friends with guys who watch porn. If I actually thought it was immoral and I thought it was like akin to an actual moral wrongdoing, like murder or the R word, then I wouldn't be friends with those people. I wouldn't be friends with girls and guys who watch porn or go to the strip clubs.
How do you determine whether something's morally positive or negative?
It would be by case. I can't flesh out a perfect moral
would it
system
be
for
would
you
it be
right
based
now.
on the consequences of that
I'm
action?
asking you, what does morality have to do with a romantic preference?
Don't.
So, okay,
hang on.
you
No,
have
no,
to-
listen. That's a bait and switch.
It's not.
You
This whole
always
question
do,
arose
you always
because
do
he
the
asked
same
me
thing. When I ask you a
preferences.
question, you answer with a question. What he asked you specifically is, how do you know something you're doing is moral or immoral?
I don't know. I
How
don't
do you
have.
know?
I don't have a pure moral framework at this
So
time.
you're not a moral absolutist.
No shit.
I said I probably subscribe.
There you go,
more to
you're a
moral
consequentialist.
absolutism.
You're a consequentialist.
Because
Is that- are those
you
the two
say okay,
options?
you took murder and you take all of these other things based on the consequences of what happens in that scenario. So murder.
People,
if
people
someone
who are
commits
anti-murder
murder,
are just
it's a negative.
consequentialists.
Wait,
I'm
let
pretty
him
sure
finish.
moral
Just-
absolutism
No,
is
you-
against murder.
Wait
Come on.
for it. Just let him finish.
So if you
He
commit
makes no
murder,
sense.
the consequence is negative because you take someone's life, you take human life. So that's a consequence. So
pretty
you're
s-
looking at the consequence and you determine it's bad. You don't take. You're not pulling from objective standard.
And if-
you are taking your interpretation of the consequence
That's-
and then conflating that with negativity.
If you think moral absolutists wouldn't object to murder, you're deranged.
Then tell us what your standard is.
For why someone should be against murder, that doesn't fit the consequentialist
No,
framework.
no.
For your standard of what your morality is based on.
I don't even know why we're talking about morality.
I know that you don't know, but
You're
now why
using this
can
as
you-
an evasion 'cause you
what
don't wanna
you're
concede
saying
on the
is-
point
what
that
you're
my
saying
preference is
Here's
completely
what you're actually
consistent.
saying. You're not saying I don't know why we're talking about morality. You're saying I don't know the answer to your fucking question.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for what is
Right.
your perfect moral
So
framework.
your,
When I write
so
a
your,
book
so
right
your moral
now,
framework
No.
is based on something you don't even know.
don't even know.
Yeah, you don't even know.
No,
People
yeah,
write
because
300
you said-
pages to flesh out their morality. They can't give you a 2-sentence quip on the whatever
They can.
podcast.
No,
No, they
you
can't.
say
Yes, they can.
you say the foundation.
No,
for,
because if I asked you, you'd probably say like, "Oh, I subscribe
Christian
to
ethics.
Christianity," but
Christian
then you'd probably
ethics.
have some exceptions to that.
And you could maybe flesh those out by giving me an internal critique, which I'm fine with because I follow Christian ethics, which is exactly
just
what I'm
saying you
doing to
have yet
you.
to explain
so
how any
now,
of this pertains
so now,
to my
hang on.
romantic
So you just
preferences.
told me, you said I have a worldview. I can't justify my worldview. I don't even know how I came to the worldview. I don't even know what my standard is for morality. But this thing over here, that's not immoral. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm saying, how does morality? Can you explain to me why morality even pertains to this conversation of romantic preferences?
Because if we're talking about pornography, we're coming at it from two different standards. I'm saying that the standard is immoral. You're saying that the standard is moral. I'm saying I'm going to justify my morality. You say you can't justify your morality. I want people to listen to the guy who can justify their morality and not to the person who absolutely
Okay, here's
can't.
my 2-sentence cute little answer. I think generally people should aim to self-actualize, and genuinely they should like seek to fulfill their autonomy. So if someone has a certain goal for themselves that generally is not harming someone else, and for instance, like they want to fuck as many people as possible,
What
and
does
they're not creating other
self-actualize
harm.
mean?
Will live up to their potential. I don't know if that's congruent with a Christian framework.
Live up to, I don't
so
even know what that
I mean,
means.
all this is consequence based. It's dependent upon the outcome.
That's not true.
It
What else
is
is it
though.
that-
What is it
Self-actualizing
dependent on?
is consequentialist based. I think you can self-actualize and maybe not have nothing to show for it at the end of the day, but I
Yeah.
think a absolutist would
But
still look
these
at the
are what's-
effort and the intention. That's literally what an absolutist is.
Well,
They look
okay,
at the
you're
intention
giving him
behind the
preferences.
You're just saying.
You're just giving him
okay, you're
preferences.
just talking about the absence of negative outcomes. So I mean, it is
That doesn't make it a
consequentialism.
consequentialist just because it
No,
also
no.
happens to overlap with consequentialism.
I'm asking for the standard, and
No,
you're just giving us preferences.
Let me ask you, why is it that my romantic preference has anything to do with morality, or why is it inconsistent? I know it sounds bad to say I do OF, but I wouldn't date a guy who does X, Y, and Z, but genuinely flesh it out, because right now it just sounds like you guys have an unjustified visceral reaction to the fact that I sound like a hypocrite. But you can actually flesh it out.
Okay, so let me flesh it out for you one more
Flesh it
time.
out without just asking, oh, right, give me a two-sentence moral framework.
I'm not even going to ask you a question. I'm just literally going to flesh it out for you.
If I ask you why you wore a blue shirt
I'm
over
trying
red,
to answer
and
your
then you said I
question.
just prefer blue, would
Yeah, that
I
would
say,
be a
okay, then it's
preference.
immoral to
That would
wear
be a
red?
preference.
Then why is mine not a preference?
You would have to make a justification for that.
What do you
unless,
mean?
Unless you're saying that your entire moral framework is just a preference.
So if you were to say I look better in a blue shirt than a red shirt, and I were to say,
I would
oh,
say
then you're selfishly motivated. Why are you only interested in what you like? Maybe you should survey the
If you
panel
can make a good
and
argument,
find out like what we
yeah,
prefer
make a
looking
great
at. 'Cause we're the
argument.
one who's going to have to stare at you for 4 hours. But wouldn't you say that's kind of a weird rebuttal
Is
to
that
why
your-
you chose a
is
blue
that
shirt
your
over a red
argument?
shirt?
Is that your argument?
I'm showing you how ridiculous you
No,
sound.
my argument's not ridiculous. What
It's
you're
completely
saying,
ridiculous.
Then stop talking. Let me make my argument. What you're saying is just a sequence of preferences. You're saying, Andrew, why did your preference to do this thing, which you have a preference to do, that nobody considers immoral, including you and I, why did you do that thing? I say, well, because it's a preference. You go, oh, okay, makes sense. It's a preference. All you're giving us right this second for the entire standard, for your entire morality, is your preference.
Not
And
morality.
stop.
I'm
Let me
saying
finish.
my romantic
Let me
standards
finish.
are more
Almost
akin
done.
to why you chose a
Almost
certain shirt
done.
over
Almost
another.
Almost done. Almost done.
You let
Almost
these
done.
male guests blow vape, but if I talk for
No
more than
lie.
2 seconds,
No lie.
then
Seriously,
No
she's
lie.
been
It's
over
just
top so
so
many
Oh,
times.
it's so unfair.
Disrespectfully,
I didn't say it was
he always
unfair.
stops
It's
her
not
for you and
unfair.
never stops you guys for her ever.
well, because this is with the male audience. Okay,
Oh,
continue.
I'm sorry. You know what, Farah? I know I was just about to lay the entire groundwork for my epistemology, and you don't have any, but you go ahead. I'll chill out.
Is
while
that what you
make
think
an
I was
argument.
having rebuttal to? I was saying the fact that he will always cut me off after 2 sentences, but let any male guest on this panel blow vape for like 3 minutes plus, even if it's not related to the
Yeah,
conversation, and I can never do that.
Nobody said
I'm not
anything.
picking a fight with you.
No. I equally. I make fair attempts to let everybody speak. You know, I'm a.
I will pay someone to comb through this and create a chart of
Now
how much you interrupt.
You go ahead.
No,
There's
you
only-
go ahead.
there's
I was
only
just
been two
talking
people.
with
Go ahead
him.
now.
Talking about dating preferences, I'm so lost.
But he knows that he can't let it slide if I'm an OF girl and I say I went to watch, like, date a guy who watches porn, so he has to now try to dunk on me
Well, here-
ethically, even though it doesn't pertain to ethics.
Let's continue. Let's continue on. So Andrew was making a point.
How
Did
does
you
it?
Angry.
How does it not?
He got so angry.
How does it not?
Him?
Yes.
How does it not pertain to?
I'm chilling.
Yeah,
We're
how does it
chilling.
not
We're
pertain
chilling.
to ethics if you tell me that you're doing something that's unethical? It's like this.
I didn't say. Did I say unethical? Anywhere in my initial answer, did I say
Here's
I
what your
wouldn't do
argument.
it because watching
yeah,
porn is
here's
unethical?
what your argument is. What your argument is, you go to me and you're like, "Hey, Andrew, I'm about to go commit murder." And then I go, "Wait, you can't do that." And here's why. And you're like, "I didn't want to have a conversation about my ethical standards. I just wanted to tell you that I was going to go commit murder." That's your argument right now, Farah.
It's not. My
It
argument is
is.
exactly akin to saying maybe I would wear a blue shirt over a red one. And
No.
I'm saying it's a preference.
No, I'm saying from my standpoint, you doing OnlyFans is immoral. You agree that that's true?
But that wasn't even the argument. If you want to discuss the morality of sex work, I'd love to get into
Did you
that
say
with
you were on
you.
OnlyFans?
Yes, but that
Okay, well
wasn't
then
your
great.
rebuttal
So-
to me. Your rebuttal to
so
me
now-
was that I'm contributing to something wrong while not preferring it in a partner. But
And
the reason
what-
I wouldn't prefer
and
those
what-
traits in a partner is not because
and
I think
what
it's
did I
immoral.
tell you you were
I think it's
contributing
because
to?
it would
Let her
create a
finish.
partner that
Yeah.
wouldn't be as pair bonded to me. That was the whole point.
And what did I tell you? The point was of me saying, wait a second, you're contributing to X thing by being on OnlyFans, right?
Yes, I am contributing to X thing. That doesn't make X thing immoral because I
Right.
wouldn't date or
so
fuck
now we
X
can get
thing.
into why X thing is immoral.
Let's do it, but then concede that that doesn't mean I was calling
I
X thing immoral.
literally told you for the purpose of the argument,
Enough
I'll
for the purpose
concede
of
it.
the argument.
Like, why won't you let it move on?
Because you didn't even address you were wrong. You created a rebuttal to what I was saying and then
Yeah,
completely switched
and I'm
the topic.
still trying to get into the ethics of this thing.
But we can get into the ethics of
So
sex
are your
work and
ethics just a
OnlyFans.
preference?
I would love to.
Is it
I
just
would
a
love
preference?
to.
Is it just a preference?
Is what a preference?
Is the fact that you say that OnlyFans is moral, the fact that you say like apparently I guess prostitution is
When did
moral.
we say moral?
Stop.
I didn't
Stop,
okay.
Farah. I just let you talk, right? So, are you saying that OnlyFans? You're making the claim OnlyFans moral, right?
No, I did not say that, and I know you know I didn't say that. I literally said we can discuss
So
the
is it-
morality of it. I was saying
So
there's
is it
nothing
immoral?
Immoral?
As a moral absolutist, is it immoral
I'm sorry,
or
is
moral?
there no such thing as moral neutrality, such as you wearing a flannel versus him wearing a leather
Yes.
jacket versus him wearing a
Yes,
hoodie?
you can say moral. It's morally neutral. I'm fine with that too.
I would say it's morally neutral.
It's morally neutral.
Well, it depends case by case.
Is it absolutely morally neutral?
No, that's why I said case by case.
Are you absolutely sure?
Same way I could probably find a way to say maybe you wearing these certain shirts aren't exactly morally neutral because maybe a child sewed that shirt and then we could get into it case by case, but generally I can say it's morally neutral for you to have different shirts that you're wearing. Is that fair?
Sure, it's morally neutral for me to have.
Is it okay
a
for me to
certain
ask
shirt.
you to justify the morality of your shirt?
So hang on. So OnlyFans to you is just like me wearing a shirt. It's
I
morally
said
neutral.
it's case by case, same way exactly. I don't know. Maybe if you had a 4-year-old make that shirt for you
Agreed.
today, then we could get
Fair
into
enough.
it.
So we go into it's a case by case. So
Yes, it
inside
depends
of
on the model, the consumer, the
got
relationship
it. So
status.
inside of OnlyFans, how would you evaluate, absent bad consequences, the things inside of OnlyFans that you would consider moral or immoral?
Probably the ethics of sex work. So typical things like whether the model is being groomed into it, whether the consumer
Consequence. Next.
whether the consumer is honest with his romantic partner about it.
Consequence.
That's not consequence.
Then why would you
That's not
value? Why would
consequence.
you value it absent negative consequence?
I think if you're looking at something like dishonesty and integrity, that if anything that pertains more to moral absolutism than it does consequentialism.
Why would
because
it
if the
be-
partner doesn't
yeah.
find out, then technically that's fine by consequentialism because maybe he got to jack off to a model and keep his relationship
Really?
going. But I would still say that's wrong,
So it's okay.
even though he's lying to his wife
So
about
it's okay to tell a lie if it saves a life.
What?
Can you tell a lie if it saves a life?
I think it depends.
It depends on the consequences, Farah.
What?
It
No, it depends on
No?
the lie itself and the severity of the
Well,
lie.
no, okay.
Unrelated from
so the-
consequence.
yeah.
You know you're pivoting. You know
I'm
it.
not. This is literally to your point. I'm testing your logic. So my logic is to say I think you're consequentialist. I think all the things you just named are consequence-based for negative outcomes.
No, it's literally
It's
not. I
literally
literally
is,
said,
and
listen
this
to me.
is how I can demonstrate it for
Can
you.
you moderate a little bit?
This is how I can
I
demonstrate
just
it
kind
for
of,
you.
I'm more of a free flow kind of.
Yeah, this
Are
is.
you playing solitaire?
This is how I
No,
can
I'm not
demonstrate
playing
it.
solitaire.
This is how I can demonstrate it.
Okay, listen.
I know you
no,
just
no,
want to
before we
prattle.
change the topic,
Yeah.
Wait, okay, here.
Before-
Let's let Farha.
Thank you so
there you go,
much.
there you go. All
It's
right,
not like I
let's go ahead,
drove 2
say it.
hours for this. Okay.
all right.
Anyways,
It's not
as
like
I
I
was
flew
saying,
across
it's
country
not
for it.
consequent. I flew too, okay? It's not consequentialist because I was literally saying even if that man who's watching the OF content is lying to his wife, but it improves the status of his relationship because now he's more likely to have sexual intimacy with his wife, but he knows that he's transgressing his wife's sexual boundary. I still think that's wrong. So
That's
that's
a
100%.
consequence.
No, it's not.
It is.
No,
It is-
it's not because
it's a
that's
consequence
increasing
of
the
your
pleasure in
actions.
his relationship. That's moral absolutism, literally, because I'm still saying that's
Yeah,
a wrong
but
deed.
If it was reversed,
If it's reversed, then that completely changes the situation.
right now, because the consequence is reversed.
The consequences
I'm
change.
obtuse on purpose. I literally
I'm
said,
not.
even
No.
if it's a net good in terms of pleasure, because maybe his wife is now enjoying him more. She's like, wow, my husband's so happy lately and jolly and cheery, and he's more happy lately. Maybe now he can actually last longer in bed. If he's transgressing her boundary, I still think it's wrong to lie
Why?
about being subscribed to an OF. Because I'm, prioritizing honesty, integrity, honoring your vows over a consequentialist
Why?
hedonism.
Yeah, why?
Why?
Yeah.
I think that's I think that's the dead end of moral absolutism is I'm valuing honesty and integrity.
Yeah, why?
Why? Because I think those are good traits.
I have a question.
So their preferences. So the entirety of
What?
Farah's worldview.
What are you talking
Listen,
about?
I'm going to explain.
I wanna hear what she has to
So this is really simple, really very simple. What you say is this: you say it bottoms out at moral absolute on truth and on this and on that things which you
On justice, integrity,
things
honesty.
that you prefer.
That is the weirdest evasion I've ever heard in my
Well,
life.
No.
no. It's not the weirdest evasion because ultimately what he's trying to get to is saying that you are the one who's determining whether it's moral or immoral. It's a preference.
Based on a preference.
That doesn't
Okay,
make it
okay.
consequentialist.
It does
No,
in
it
this case
doesn't.
because all of the things in which you value seem to be based around the
I
consequences.
literally said it's not. Even if it improves their relationship and makes it so that they don't get divorced and they have a happier marriage, I still think it's wrong
know
to
what?
transgress someone's boundary.
Fair enough. So then what we could say instead is this. Maybe you're right, and it's not that you always value the consequence. We would just say that the entirety of Farah's entire moral system comes from her preferences.
How is that a preference?
Because you said that moral absolutism bottoms out at truth and at these other values that you have, which you have a preference for.
Which I think most people have a preference
Yeah,
for.
so
The legal system, the courts, most moral
So whatever
doctrines,
the majority
most
of people
philosophers,
think that's
most
what's moral.
politicians.
So the most people determine morality then?
No,
Whatever
I didn't
the
say
most
most
believe?
people. I said specifically
Why-
the institutions which we've entrusted our justice and our legal systems with. That has nothing to do with most people. If anything,
So
that's
it's
probably less
dependent
people
upon
than
the
the overall
geological-
population.
geological
Dependent upon the
location.
majority of people believing
I
that
didn't say
it
majority.
is?
I literally said it could be a minority, but we can look at the syllogisms of why they've arrived at this conclusion of why
Then
this
tell
is
me
a
what they
moral
are.
good thing. I just love that we've detoured so much because this proves my point that it's
That's-
not inconsistent for me to
It
do
is inconsistent.
OnlyFans.
Because
why
because
is-
you've had to detour like 30 times now.
Wait, what?
Why is
Go ahead.
why is
Go
it
ahead.
important that she determines the morality of men that she wouldn't consider dating? That's what I don't understand about the entire premise of this
Why does it
conversation.
matter? Like, it's her
It
preference.
matters
Why is
because
it
the audience
her
wants him to-
responsibility to determine the morality of the men that she wouldn't consider dating, consuming the content that they would consume, regardless of how they got it? Is a consenting person creating the content? She runs her own business. She's ethically creating her own content.
Why is it ethical?
Because she's consenting to the creation of her content.
Why is that ethical?
Because that is less consumption happening of content that people are not consenting to making.
Yeah, but you just are repeating it, right? The consent is what makes it ethical. The problem is
To me,
what
that's
I'm trying to
the most
do.
important
What I'm trying to
aspect.
do is get to the foundation of why you think things are ethical or unethical. That's the point. Why do you think things are ethical or unethical? Why?
Based on, I mean, that depends on the conversation.
No. Why do you think things are good or bad?
I mean, I don't do that off of any religious aspect.
Usually
I do that
spiritual
Yeah,
people
so
don't
why-
believe in good
why
and
do you
bad.
think-
Usually we do positive and negative.
based on basically like the do no harm,
So you think that things are bad if they're harmful.
and harmful is subjective.
That's
yes.
your principle.
Yes.
Okay.
Harmful is subjective, but
That's
for
true.
me,
There's kinks
I
out
make
there.
that determination based on my lived experience.
Okay, so what you're trying to avoid then, this is the principle we're just trying to get at, which far evaded a million times, is that for you, you're just looking at things through the outlook of you don't want there to be harm caused.
Correct. And there's
Okay.
and then of course with any decision in any business there are risks and like of harm factor. You know, you can be a CEO making $100,000 a year doing beyond unethical damage to the environment, to the society at large, to several factors, and not using sex to do so. So her doing that, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, and there is no ethical.
There's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Correct. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism.
That would mean that capitalism always does harm, right?
Not always.
Well, then it can't be no. Then it can't be no. You can't say there can be no ethical consumption,
Under
and
the
then say,
current-
but except for the times there can be.
Well, they both exist. So there
What
are
exists?
things that can be ethical and things that can't be, but you cannot experience consumption without there being unethical, aspects that are outside of our control as an individual.
And those are immoral,
Okay.
right?
I mean, dependent, yeah.
Dependent on what? If it causes harm, it's immoral, right?
Yes, but
Okay.
I lost track of what
so
the
then,
it was. Sorry.
So then every single time somebody does something which is harmful, it's immoral. We've established that, and you said that there's no chance they can never be ethical consumption ever, not even one case inside of capitalism. That means capitalism's always harmful, right?
See, well, you're trying to boil it down to white and black thinking.
Yeah.
And that's just not.
Yeah, it is.
The
It's
line,
either yes
the
or
path
no.
I'm trying to go
Is
down.
subjective also.
Yeah.
Wait, are we talking about
Well,
communism
it can't be
now?
subjective. It can't be subjective if you say
We
all.
could. We could talk about
no,
it.
but see, the
not subjective when you
sex
say
work
all.
is the commodification of sex. That is a part of capitalism. That was the point from which I was deriving from.
What was the point? What?
Yeah.
That sex work is the commodification of sex.
Uh-huh.
The commodification aspect is what I was aligning with capitalism and making that statement.
So then sex work is immoral under capitalism.
I don't understand that line of logic.
You just said that it's sex work's a commodification under capitalism, and
Well,
any type of
under
transaction
any-
under capitalism
It's
is
not
immoral.
exclusive to capitalism.
So therefore, sex
not
work.
exclusive to
I didn't say.
capitalism.
All I asked you was, so sex work in capitalism is always immoral?
No.
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 So then all things which are commodified and
I mean,
transactions made under
I'm
capitalism
on
are not
I'm on
immoral.
the side here. I don't moralize sex work. It's
So
a
then
work.
there are transactions under a capitalist society which are moral.
Yeah.
Okay, but then why did you say that there can be no ethical transactions ever under communism
that's what you said.
or under capitalism? No, you said that.
No, I did not.
Okay, go ahead and repeat your spiel about communism again.
Capitalism.
Capitalism, sorry. There can be no what under capitalism.
There maybe there's a better way of phrasing it
But
than
what did you
that
say
phrase.
though? What did you say?
What the exact phrase I believe is there is no like when you're saying it's a simplified phrase.
There
so
is
you're trying
no-
to there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. That is what I said.
So then
However,
OnlyFans under capitalism is unethical.
Or morally neutral, which you keep forgetting exists.
But she can't. She said all transactions under capitalism are unethical. All of them. Every one of them.
She didn't say unethical. She said no ethical consumption. That's the least
Are
like
you
morally
consuming?
neutral.
Are you consuming OnlyFans?
ethical.
Are you consuming OnlyFans? She said it was
I'm not.
commodified. She said it's commodified. So if somebody's consuming OnlyFans, by her
No,
logic,
I know.
it has to be
But
unethical.
she didn't say unethical. She said no ethical consumption. It could be morally neutral
If so then if somebody's consuming OnlyFans, that would be unethical.
or ethically neutral.
It can't be ethically neutral if she says every single time.
She said
X
no
happens.
ethical, not unethical. Those are two different things.
Yes.
So so everything under your worldview then, when it comes to capitalism, is either immoral or morally neutral. There's no moral goods.
I'm sorry. Please repeat that question. I want to make sure I understood that.
Under capitalism, can you do anything that is a moral good?
I mean, yes, because I don't go into the absolutes.
Then now, right? Are you still going to make the claim, Farah, now that she said, yes, you can at least do positive things, right? She did say that under her ethical system, repeat it again, I just want to make sure I get it right, so that I'm not straw manning you.
About the capitalism quote?
Yeah.
There is no ethical consumption under or no, that's what you said.
There is no ethical consent. That's what you said the first time.
And I may have misquoted the phrasing. Honestly, I'm dyslexic, so honestly, I could have misquoted what I meant to say. So yeah, so that's very plausible there, but.
Good talk.
Anyway.
Dating podcast, by the way.
Right.
Got into economics.
I think we were going around saying our preferences.
Yes, preferences.
That was about mine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
I know
you,
Love to get
Farah
back to
knows
that.
the
Thank you,
clubs.
Farah.
Yeah.